threat together. We are Americans. We are brave. We are strong. And we will prevail. God bless each and every one of you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
So what's going to happen? Let's just do it. Let's get married.
Serious?
Yeah. Right now.
Made it?
Yeah. Wish it could have been nicer. I think it's beautiful. I, Timothy Davis, hereby take you, Karen Ranger, my wife, have her to hold from this moment on. Till death do us part.
I, Karen Ranger, hereby take you, Timothy Davis, my husband, to have and to hold from this moment on till death do us part.
It's okay, Daisy. We're not going outside. It's ugly. Tell you what, I'll give you more treaties. Give you more treaties to play with if you're bored.
I'm kind of married.
Operation Haven is a top-secret project years in the making, designed for a crisis such as this. It's a network of underground facilities throughout the U.S. connected directly to the White House bunker, which will also serve as Haven's communications center. There's only room for 150,000 key government and military personnel, as well as a select group of professionals and tradespeople necessary for a society to survive. If you are in this room, you're on the list. Gather your families.
Okay, Daisy, got treaties for you.
Beverly, pack your bags fast. Only the essentials. We're leaving.
What do you mean we're leaving?
Operation Haven.
What's that?
A network of government underground shelters. I never thought I would live to see it used.
Go get Karen.
What about our neighbors and our friends?
Beverly, they're not on the list.
There's no time to discuss this.
What about Michael and Tim?
Come on.
Here you go, Daisy. Here you go, girl. Okay, sit. You want your ball? Sit, Daisy.
We don't have time.
She's my daughter. I'm not leaving without her.
Go find her. I'll stay here in case she comes back.
40 minutes. If we can't find her in 40 minutes, we come back. If we can't, William, we leave.
You find her. You don't come back for me.
William.
You might play the cat. Go.
Listen, you were right about the high-frequency disruptor. It stopped us.
It's too late. The facility's been shut down and evacuated.
No, there's still a chance. The key is to use the high-frequency disruptor as a shield.
What are you talking about?
I've been running simulations. The CME are negatively charged particles. We use the disruptor to negatively charge the Earth's magnetic field. It'll be like two similar magnetic poles repelling one another. They're indeflected.
The HFD can't do that with a negatively charged frequency pulse. It's too localized.
Unless it's an uninterrupted beam, it'll spread exponentially.
Oh, the system wasn't designed for that. It would have to be reconfigured.
Well, I'm willing to try.
My system password is rootload 2464. Security code is Alpha 6832.
Got it.
Michael. You only have 2 hours.
Don't worry about it. I'll be fine. Split up. We're moving coming out. What was that?
Tim taught me.
What? She wants to learn how to handle a weapon.
I don't even want to know.
Tim! Tim, are you home? Mr. Davis! Mrs. Davis! We'll try the barn. Maybe she's with Michael.
Bev,
Do it, Jack!
what the hell was that?
I don't know, but it's getting worse. There's a solar flare.
That might have been the next class. Why we stopped it? Because I don't want my spark plugs to get ruined by that EMP blast.
What's happening?
Hang on!
Bev.
I think it's over.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me. The solar flame must have killed it.
Or I should have bought a new battery.
You have to jump start. Put it safe. Pop the clutch.
There's one coming!
It's gonna be close. Pop the clutch!
There's another one!
Pop the clutch! Pop it now!
Almost!
How long have you been like this?
Maybe an hour. We were in a car accident.
Blurry dilation is normal. There's no swelling from the injury. Mr. Hellcroft, do you have any more family coming? Mr. Hellcroft.
No, just my wife and I.
Well, let's go to the DNA.
We're in.
How much time before impact?
I don't want to know.
40 minutes. And hypothetically, 10 minutes to negatively charge the ionosphere.
Hypothetically?
They still have one satellite connected. monitoring the CME headsets.
What do I do?
I want you to keep us posted on the countdown. I'm setting the target. Wide dispersal in the ionosphere, 1,000 kilometers. Maximum intensity. Now, you override the safety systems. Bypass the polarity condensers. Hardwire the generators together right into the antenna array. It'll give us one continuous negatively charged beam instead of an oscillating pulse.
How do we hardwire the generators?
Very quickly. All right. Ted, grab your tool bag.
I really hope you know what you're doing. Piece of cake.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We patched the black cables when we were coming in. I want you to take them and daisy chain each of those generators together. Can you do that?
Daisy chain.
Now, we're gonna connect all the generators and create one massive generator.
Got it.
Move!
Operation Haven's been completed. This bunker is now linked with all of our other facilities.
CME?
24 minutes getting back.
Seal the bunker.
I think across the street know that they've lost their privacy. They're gonna be fixed. Anyway, we just got. Okay, Daisy. We take you downstairs to go see our, oh, look at, you turned off the remote. Okay, Daisy, we're done. Let me saw. Plug it in, we're going downstairs. We'll go see if we, yeah, the truck's there. Okay, let's go see your puppy friends. Yeah, we'll go see your pup. We're not going outside, Daisy. We're just gonna go to the courtyard. Just the courtyard, that shade. Not going out in that mess. Hang on, Daisy. Come on, Daisy. Okay, where's your ball? Where's the ball, Daisy? Oh, Daisy, where's the ball? Okay, I found it. Hang on, Daisy. I'm coming. Where did you put your ball? Is it all done? All done. No more, all gone. Put some in here, Daisy. Look at those pretty eyes. Oh, such a pretty girl. Can you open it, Daisy? There we are. There you go, Daisy.
normally do videos upon request, but a lot of people have on the website, especially
A severe injury caused by a lack of oxygen to her brain. Police say she had drugs in her system at the time of the crash. Ann Heche was 53 years old.
This is a time for judgment. Welcome to today's show. I don't normally do videos upon request, but a lot of people have on the website, especially, have mentioned this thing with Ann Heche. I've noticed a lot of people have asked me to do a video on it here on YouTube, and I guess it's just another way to hopefully help wake people up so they realize that sacrifice, which is a word that we use in our day-to-day life because it's been implanted into our brains, that, like, we hear celebrities every day, right? Oh, the sacrifice they made. Oh, it's about sacrifice. Well, it's literally about sacrifice, and that's how magic works. They're telling you everything's about sacrifice. But we think in our heads, we're like, oh, sacrifice means, I'm getting up an hour early and going into work or going into the gym. When these people literally get where they are and they tell you it's because of sacrifice, but it's really because of human sacrifice. Now, Ann Heche is an actress, if you're not familiar with her. Not that famous, but most known for dating Ellen DeGeneres. Has been in some movies like Wag the Dog. And when you see these things occur, obviously you can immediately go, well, you could say everybody's a sacrifice, but you have to look for the obvious signs. And there's tons of obvious signs, including coming out of a body bag and sitting up as you're getting wheeled into a fire truck or an ambulance, which I'll show you. I mean, some of the stuff with this is so in our faces and so obvious that it's laughable how sloppy. I mean, this just reminds me of some of the false flags we see our government create all around the country all the time. And people go, well, what do they do? Why do they sacrifice these actors and actresses? Because part of the deal that they make is that when the time comes, and I'll show you this clip here, the time comes, you have to make sacrifices. People are sacrifices for one another. Certain celebrities sacrifice other certain celebrities. That's how this whole thing works. So this is a clip from a movie that I always use. The movie's called The Believers.
Okay, Daisy, I'll give you a treat. I want you to drop that, please. Come on, Daisy. That's not for a puppy. Where's the little piece of paper? If you ate it, you don't get a treat. Here, I gotta get it. Good girl. Yes, you found a little piece of paper. What a good girl. Now you get a treat for not eating it. Oh.
This ground, where this father's humble offering, to seek the strength and wisdom of our benefactors.
We call upon the ancient gods to renew our strength, and guide your hand to strike down the enemies of our faith and of this great nation.
We welcome our brother Cap, reborn in your grace.
I will adopt. This is our burning light. Our enemies consume by winds of fire. Strength reborn since such a love.
Sunny. Masaya Genji. Sunny.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the stuff with Ann Heche here. Now, interestingly enough, if you look into the history of her, you have common themes that we always see with Satanists and the occult. Ann Heche, abused as a child by her father. Usually when this happens, and I'm not saying 100% of the time, but I would say 90% of the time, the parents are usually in covens or cults, and they push this abuse onto children, and then it's a vicious cycle that never ends. That's how they've taken over so much is that so many of these people in Hollywood have been abused as children, and then they become the abusers. So people feel sorry for them because they're like, well, they were abused, but at the same time, it's like, well, they could stop the vicious cycle and come out and, expose what this really is, but they don't most of the time, and sometimes when they try to, they have malfunction. So Anne Heche was abused by her father as a child. We don't know if it's definitely satanic ritual abuse, but it reeks of it because she became a famous actress. Okay? All these people in Hollywood we obviously know are involved in the occult. Another thing that's very bizarre about this is that she died via, supposedly, of course, crashing her car, which I'll show you now, which is probably one of the most ridiculous clips you ever get to see. I mean, really, this is like WWE type of stuff. Her brother died at a young age via the same death. He crashed a car into a tree and died when the family was living in New Jersey. So very similar, and remember how the occult operates. These rituals always seem to have significant meaning behind them. But here is Anne Heche. Okay, let's start with this. Her book cover for her book that she wrote. You can see her doing all-seeing eye symbolism right on the cover. Don't call me crazy, or call me crazy, excuse me. Or she's holding the hand over the blatant all-seeing eye symbols, and they always do the all-seeing eye symbols. And you can, pretty much every single celebrity, you'll find them on a magazine cover, a book cover, doing this. Now, this isn't like, people are like, well, put their hand over their eye. Well, no one's catching her, getting a mosquito or a fly out of her eye. This is her book cover. So clearly, they take these photographs, they specifically want these pictures on magazine covers and on book covers, et cetera, et cetera. You can catch a guy doing something and it wouldn't be on purpose. Like I always say, if you watch baseball, there's 2 outs. A lot of the guys hold up the devil horn, but they're not holding up the devil horns. They're holding up the number 2 to say there's 2 outs. So that's a little bit different. But when you're strategically placing it on covers like this, and she shows it all over her Instagram account, where she's doing all-seeing eye symbolism, which tells you she's one of them. And then if you look into the stuff she pushes and believes, like all the Hollywood loons, you obviously know that she's a witch, just like the rest of them. Now, let's look into, as we see, of course, her too with the black and white Masonic checkerboard. I wouldn't be surprised if she's Job's daughter, Rainbow Girl, and then initiated into Eastern Star Masonry. She was starring in a film coming out, of course, about human trafficking, so there's another connection there. Now, this wasn't about satanic ritual abuse, so I would say this is her doing her part, because, of course, these people will never expose Satanism. They pretend that human trafficking is happening from people like me and you. Next door neighbor wants to make a couple $1,000s, so he kidnaps somebody and sells them. That's not how trafficking really works. The occult literally birth people. In these covens, they birth children and use them specifically for trafficking. It's the biggest business in the world, bigger than drug trade, because they sell, children to one another, to other, people who are in these secret societies for exorbitant amounts of money. Money you couldn't even fathom. And I've talked about over the years that they launder and use art shows and art galleries as fronts, places where you can put any price possible on an object. That way you can get away with, doing this stuff, and that's what they've set, this whole world has been set up to be for them. That's how they're getting away with all this stuff, or have gotten away with it, but they won't be getting away with it for much longer. So here's the clip, okay, of Anne Heche she drives her car into a tree. This is the actual news clip, and you can see her on a gurney, literally come out of a body bag. They're telling us that she's brain dead, but she sits up, almost as if they threw her in the body bag. And you might say about the car crash, like this erratic driving. Okay, well, this erratic driving can clearly be controlled because they have the ability to take control of cars. These smart cars, a lot of the cars, most of the cars, unless they're depending on what year what year the car is from, any cars that are current, they have the ability to hijack with the technology that they have. They can literally chime in, just zap themselves into the computer base of that car and do what they want. So this erratic driving, which makes no sense, and somebody who, of course, she was buying a wig or something like that beforehand. I'll show you that interview clip as well. So let's take a look at her sitting up on the gurney, and notice the ambulance or the fire truck with the number 36. How convenient. Usually those are the numbers you'll see, 33, or you see 36, as in 666, 3 6s. Here she is sitting up, literally coming out of a body bag, WWE style.
Bobby and Marla, it was amazing what happened out here at LA City Fire Department. I got to give it to them right off the bat. The men and women from this fire department, some of the most amazing. Vehicle into a structure, then that car catches fire. And when we say into a structure, I mean all the way in, almost coming out the other side. This house out here on Walgrove, right at the cross of Brookhaven, at Preston, you can see that T intersection. The best we can figure, that vehicle was on this street and made its way across, not stopping ever, through those hedges, through the front door, or through that front wall of this home, and lodged itself almost in the back. Then it caught fire. LA City Fire Department arriving here very quickly. They had this home with fire and knowing there's a vehicle inside there. Firefighters making an attack on that fire. Other firefighters trying to get into that building to get that driver out of that car. While all this was going on, they couldn't get to that car. They actually had to call in heavy rescue. That's what you see right there. They hooked up cables to that car, pulled it out. It's actually in that driveway. And then the driver, well, LA City Fire Department, their paramedics pulled that driver from that vehicle. We have tape of that, and then basically had him on a gurney. We weren't sure what the situation was there on his condition, but then as he made his way over to the ambulance, you see it right there, he jumps up out of that gurney. It was horrific, scary for a moment for everybody watching. And then the fire department, well, they had to sedate him and take him to the hospital. Right now, though, the structure is still standing. No other victims inside that home. But again, this happening out here in Palms this afternoon. Crazy thing to see for sure. But again, that no other injuries, and that driver now in the hospital. I'm Stu up in Sky Fox. Back to you guys in the studio.
I don't. So, I mean, they're airing this, and they're like telling this story, and nobody's like, she's sitting up out of the body bag. It's like, did anyone notice she's sitting up out of the body bag there? And then they're telling us she has brain trauma, and that she's not going to survive the brain injuries. And eventually, of course, she passes away. I wonder how. I wonder where they really took her, right? What hospital was she actually in, or what ritual was performed on her? So they told you right after this that she wasn't expected to survive the brain injury, probably because she was already long gone at that point. A few days after this, probably every single limb was probably taken off and eaten by these people, because that's what they do. That's how sick they are. And they tell you it's just some type of brain injury when all the oxygen is cut off from the brain, etc., etc. But you don't hear any stories on the news. They're talking about her all over the news, but nobody's like, hey, did you notice she sat up in a body bag? Why would you be in the body bag in the first place? You wouldn't be in a body bag in the first place, because if you had any kind of a pulse, they wouldn't put you in a freaking body bag, okay? When somebody dies, you make sure the person's dead. And usually, like, if somebody dies at home or something like that, like you wait, the funeral parlor person comes, etc., hours go by. You don't just grab somebody all out of a crime scene, especially, there's clearly she's barely wounded. Like, you don't see blood all over the place. You just see them throw her in a body bag. They probably punched her in the face or whatever when they went over to the car because she was still conscious and they wanted to get her into the body bag. So she sits up in the body bag. Then you have the interview with the hairstylist guy or whatever. She was wig shopping, and he said she's in a great mood. Just literally minutes before this occurred.
We're learning more details about the moments leading up to Friday's fiery crash involving actress Anne Heche. New surveillance video shows Heche barreling through an alleyway, nearly hitting a pedestrian. A business owner in Venice also telling us the actress visited his store moments before the crash. Richard Glass says Heche was shopping for a wig and acting like, quote, a sweet little girl.
I was just so taken aback, and I was like, what happened? Because she didn't, like I said, she didn't seem impaired to me.
Heche was seen speeding and driving erratically through surface streets. She's believed to have been behind the wheel for at least one hit and run when the actress slammed into a garage. The dangerous ride came to an end when she smashed her car into a home in LA's Mar Vista neighborhood. That violent collision sparked a fire. The LAPD has served a warrant for a blood sample. They suspect she may have been under the influence. A representative for Heche says she remains in a coma and has not regained consciousness.
So she's in a great mood, but of course they come out. All they have to do is say mental health problems and addiction, right? Because they can just use those as free passes to do whatever they want. So they do rituals out in the open. Now, why was she chosen? I don't know. Why are any of these people chosen? When their time comes, their time comes. Sometimes they're asked to do something and they don't do it. Sometimes they don't give enough back to the brotherhood or the sisterhood, whatever you want to call it, in her case. And their time comes. You know, Robin Williams, I mean, we've seen all these people over the years with these mysterious deaths that make no sense, and then they just come out and they say, oh, they were severely depressed. Now, were they? Floating around with millions of dollars, can go wherever they want, don't have to live by the same rules that the rest of us live by. Yeah, they're all just offing themselves. And some people are like, well, they started to get guilty of the lives that they lived. Doubtful, because most of these people always go in a sacrifice. Even if the person is like 80 or 90 years old, and they're dying of cancer or something like that, they usually will just do a ritual where they're allowed to somebody, allowing themselves to be offered as a sacrifice to Satan. So instead of like dying in their bed, we'll hear like, oh, so-and-so died at 90 in their bed. They'll usually perform the ritual because they'll offer themselves up and they'll do a huge ritual for the person. So in this case, you can look at it and say, well, maybe she was going to come out and say some stuff. I mean, there's always things that people think of. I have no idea. So there's no need to speculate. But you can clearly see, just from looking at this stuff, it's bizarre. I mean, you might not believe in any of this stuff, but how do you look at it and say, this is normal? Oh, her brain suddenly worked for a second, oxygen flew in her brain, so she sat up. She unzipped herself out of a body bag. You ever been in a body bag? I mean, I haven't, but I'm pretty familiar that it's like super hard to get out of a body bag, right? Like the zipper on it, and she somehow pops out of the thing, and she shouldn't even have been in the first place. And, you can look at the erratic driving. I mean, it looks like somebody had full control of her car. Easy way to do these types of rituals, right? Another thing that they want with 5G, like full control of people's cars, because they want full control over everyone. They want to be able to do whatever they want to anyone at any time. And our society is enabling them to be able to do those things. So you saw the video clip in the beginning with the ritual. That's really, how the occult operates. In these rituals, they are asked to offer things up, even their own children. Most of the time, these people are always connected and surrounded by death. And Hesh, whatever, is another example. Multiple family members dead, father was an abuser, right? Same story. But the narrative is always very similar. It's like, how many people know somebody who was abused as a kid? I'm sure everybody might know a person or two, maybe. I don't know anybody personally, other than people who have reached out to me, with my channel, who have been victims of SRA. But I don't know anybody who's like parents or doing any of that stuff. And again, a lot of people don't come forward, so that's understandable. But it just seems like every person in Hollywood has some story like this. They're like, oh, they're abused as a kid. Like, isn't Oprah another one? I mean, I've done so many videos on these people, and it's always this theme. Always. And they get the sympathy for it, which is understandable, but at the same time, it's like they're telling you what they're a part of. Because all of these people in covens, these Satanists who organize and do these things, they all groom and breed these children. And then these children, unfortunately, become that. Miley Cyrus is a perfect example, of what she went through. And then if you look at Miley Cyrus and all the stuff that she posts, you can clearly see she's a groomer and a handler. She's sick beyond belief. Beyond belief. Most of them all are. It's because they're under possession, and these people are they're running amok in our society. So, Anne Hayes, you could decide for yourself if it looks like a ritual sacrifice. I mean, it certainly doesn't look normal, Like, I can't recall, someone's going to a store, like, yeah, the person seemed perfectly fine. Like, maybe they'd be like, yeah, she was slurring, so maybe she was drunk or something, or on some medication. But everything seemed fine, and then they just decide they're going to drive down alleyways going 90 miles per hour. Oh! And then, of course, sit up in the body bag. I mean, look, when they tell you it's time, it's time. And that's the oath that these people all take. They know what they're getting into when they sign their deal. So, I don't feel sympathy for the devil. I don't feel sympathy for any of these people for what they get involved in, because they still have free will at the end of the day, and they still can turn to Jesus Christ. They have their whole lives to do it. And some of them are still out there. Some of them even listen to my channel or other channels like it, and they still have a chance to be saved through the blood of Jesus Christ, who died for our salvation. And they can turn away from this nonsense. But most of them never, ever do. But hopefully people out there listening, they can see this stuff and realize this is how the occult's always operated. You can look back.
It's so weird, Daisy.
Streets, she's believed to have been behind the wheel for at least.
I want to see her come out of her body bag.
In her case. And, well, doubtful, because maybe she was going to come out and say some stuff. Another thing that they want with 5G, and father was an abuser, become that. Miley Cyrus is a perfect example. You know, it's like I always say, if you watch baseball, there's two.
It's so bizarre, Daisy.
Alright, we're connected. I got Mozart playing on my desktop. Are you still listening to Mozart? I got Mozart playing on my desktop. There's going to be some echoes until I, are you still listening to Mozart? I got we're on Facebook.
Okay, this is not working.
Sent lease to this home because
This? No, I don't think that's a lizard. This is what we were listening to. Relax with Mozart. It's 6 hours long. I had it on yesterday. I wanted to show you this on my Facebook. Someone left this. Hold on.
So we assaulted?
Is there audio on this?
Please.
Alright, who's the lizard? This is 6 minutes long though. This chick, she's got a weird looking nose.
a gas and electric company sent lease to this home because
This? No, I don't think that's a lizard. She's got a funny looking face though. I don't know. I'm gonna have to. This video is 6 minutes long. I'm gonna have to.
they installed their own meters to save on bill.
If there's shifting in it, I'll find it. Alright? So I'll download that. I got a downloader I can download videos from Facebook from, so. Alright, I'll work on that. I just want to show it to you. I think that's what they want to do. Alright, so. Alright, I turned my card off. Alright, so how is everyone? Yeah, this is going to be about Lucifer. Hold on. I should have my desktop. Yeah. I got all my 2 sets of browsers. Yeah, okay. So I got a lot of research I've done on the subject already. I was thinking about maybe replaying one of my lectures from about 3 years ago. It's about 20 minutes long. Reptilian Anunnaki and the solar system. All this research I'm going to be going over with you tonight is going into my book. I told you I wasn't naming names in my book, but when I'm citing research, I am. And one of the people I am citing in my book, because he's the one that told, and I probably mentioned it here also, is Stuart Swerdlow, if you've ever heard of him. He is the one who put the theory together that the ice comet Venus, the planet Venus, was hurled by the Alpha Draconians, that they moved through solar systems, they moved it with a wormhole, and cracked it in the Maldives, which was where Atlantis and Lemuria, and it cracked the planet, made the asteroid belt. When it came into our solar system, let me show you the representation right here. Uranus got put on a tilted axis. It pulled the atmosphere off Mars, and it cracked into Maldek and created the asteroid belt. The moon was then put into place. There's a Sumerian tablet called The Sun and the Moon, where they basically admit to putting the moon in place, like the Death Star, yeah. That's, and everyone's known, they've already said that the moon is hollow. A lot of people have said that, and it's artificial. And supposedly they hold us in, they call it prison planet because, you know, the moon moves, messes up the tides, and we'll have flooding all around the planet. So we can't move the moon, and we can't nuke it. So it's like, yeah, they're holding us hostage with the moon. But hey,
That was horrible, Daisy. Poor puppy had his leg cut off. I wasn't a happy puppy show.
Hey everyone, today's NDE is rather long, clocking in at around 30 minutes. Lou tells about how after crashing his Mustang and having it burst into flames, he is
This is a company most people have never heard of, and this company quite literally owns the world. Most US banks are controlled by BlackRock. BlackRock owns all the major pharmaceutical companies. BlackRock owns most of the mainstream media, and BlackRock oversees roughly 10% of all stocks traded worldwide. And this company is now taking over governments. All of this has allowed BlackRock to amass $10 trillion in assets. Yes, trillion. BlackRock is worth half of America's total GDP. It's so crazy that the US and Chinese government now rely on BlackRock to escape recessions, with BlackRock's founder and CEO now sitting on the boards of the influential Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. In the words of Henry Kissinger, whoever controls the money controls the world, and no other company in history has had this much global influence. And what's even crazier is that BlackRock did this in just 34 years. But you want to know the best part? You've probably never heard of them for a reason which will become clearer later on, because after you watch this video, you will soon understand the real-world consequences of BlackRock's vast control.
Full-scale invasion, the likes of which we haven't seen since World War II, of Russia into Ukraine.
And those high gas prices mean the cost of everything that needs to be transported is on the rise.
So then how could BlackRock gain so much influence over the world? How could BlackRock go from being just a boring investment firm to the most powerful company that has ever existed? Well, to start, we have to delve into the past of how Larry Fink made BlackRock. Larry was born into a wealthy Los Angeles family in 1952, and from the start, he was always hungry for power. But his early years spent pursuing a career in politics, where he would gain a BA in political science from UCLA. However, he soon enough realized that politics isn't where the real power is, money is. Following this, he changed his focus early on to go into banking and real estate. And while at college, Fink was immersing himself in the world of the rich and powerful, having been a full-time member of the secretive Kappa Beta Phi, a group that's members included Michael Bloomberg and the Goldman Sachs chairmen. Fink took full advantage of these connections and started a career in the mortgage bond department at First Boston, a boring New York-based investment bank. This was where Larry would make his mark on the financial world, because over his time at First Boston, Fink became one of the highest earning employees, generating over $1 billion. He was unstoppable and it seemed like he was going to be crowned CEO. Larry became an expert in these little understood investments during his time. However, this success didn't come without a price. He wasn't going to make this money for someone other than him, and so he began creating a ticking time bomb, and only he knew how to defuse it. So in 1986, his risky practices and ambition caught up to him. After a few too many risky trades, Larry made a huge blunder. He lost $100 million of his bank's money in just the space of months. All the goodwill and reputation he had gained was crumbling into dust, leading to him being banished from First Boston. It seemed like world domination was just a silly fantasy, that he would never make it to the top. However, Fink wasn't giving up his power this easily. Instead, he would use this disaster to his advantage, vowing to make risk management and avoidance his main focus from now on. And so after becoming unemployed at age 36, Fink would team up with some of his old connections from Kappa Beta Phi, and in 1988, BlackRock was formed. In no time at all, Larry was making bank. In just 5 years, BlackRock went from being worth $5 million to over $8 billion. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. During this time, a power struggle would emerge between who would control BlackRock's future, because Fink wanted a bigger piece of the pie. He didn't want to share his plans for world domination. So in 1995, he would pressure one of the co-founders, Schwartzman, to sell their stake in BlackRock for $250 million. A stake that would now be worth over $12 billion alone. But after these power games, Larry Fink's path to world domination was unstoppable. Larry Fink became more and more powerful over the next decade, but this still wasn't enough for his ambition. Now earlier on, I mentioned a ticking time bomb that Fink helped create in his early days at First Boston. Well, this time bomb was now ready to explode, and in 2008, the worst financial crash since the Great Depression struck the world.
Traders saying this is the craziest day they have ever seen in these markets. Veteran traders saying they've never seen anything like it. The movement in oil prices so fast.
The most serious recession in decades. And that means life, as most Americans know it, is about to change.
And the best part is, this was all under Larry's control. Larry Fink's mortgage-backed securities had been the fuse all along. And because Larry Fink knew the 2008 crash would happen, BlackRock's focus on asset management sealed them from the crisis. In fact, this disaster was an opportunity for Larry Fink, because Larry was the only man on Wall Street who could fix this crisis. And so with Larry's personal connections with the Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, BlackRock secured an uncontested contract to manage the assets of multiple banks that crumbled during the crisis, exploiting this disaster to become the most powerful man on Wall Street. But still, this was only Wall Street. This still wasn't close to world domination. So how could Larry Fink control governments and the world economy? Well, BlackRock made another breakthrough by offering ETFs. Now this might sound quite technical, but ETFs are a type of investment fund that puts money into all the companies in a certain industry. And these new investment funds proved wildly popular because of the stability and solid returns. And unsurprisingly, BlackRock became the largest player in this new market, reaching the top of its industry, sucking up money from everywhere using its new money management platform. From the biggest banks to the smallest retirement funds, BlackRock had a hand in it all. BlackRock was starting to control everything. They bought stakes in pretty much every major corporation on the stock market. I mean, if you look into who owns pretty much any major company, you're almost guaranteed to find BlackRock's name. Larry could also see the power technology would have in the future economy, which is why BlackRock poured massive wealth to build a supercomputer that analyzes what investments will make money. This program, named Aladdin, was going to manage over $20 trillion worth of assets for BlackRock. For context, $20 trillion is more than the entire United States' GDP. BlackRock would then use this money and its assets to further exert their control over the economy. And now they are inextricably tied to governments. And like 2008, the Federal Reserve hired BlackRock to manage their investments to protect them from coronavirus-led recessions. And BlackRock has used this dependence to grow their empire even further, allowing Larry Fink to be a billionaire oligarch that holds unprecedented power over not just the economy, but the entire world. He controls trends, culture, foreign policy, and the banks. He has world leaders at his beck and call, with BlackRock overseeing assets worth 10% of the world's global economy. BlackRock now owns stakes in every industry, from media companies, banks, oil companies, and weapon manufacturers. And in recent years, the consequences have become dire as Larry Fink begins to exert his control over the world. But before we continue, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. This lets you diversify with an asset class as an asset class. So skip that way. an investment company they also partly own. BlackRock now controls 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, 13% of Comcast, who themselves own NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and Sky, and they even own 12% of Disney. This is very important because it means that for any of these companies to decide on company policy, they must now also consult with BlackRock before doing so. And it's just the same with big tech. BlackRock is now the biggest institutional investor in Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and so many more. I mean, the list of their investments in companies is just endless. And by extending its reach in such a dramatic way, BlackRock now has control over more than 90% of the media, which might also be why you've never heard of them. Because controlling the media is a very important step for BlackRock to take over the world. If everyone knew the consequences of BlackRock owning over $9.5 trillion in assets, some questions might start to be raised. And you see, BlackRock's control isn't just extending through information in the media, but also through the entire world's economic and political data. And as I mentioned before, this is all done through Aladdin, where Aladdin accurately predicts the outcome of every single investment. But the question is, where does Aladdin get this information from? Well, that's where things become very jarring. You see, because of BlackRock's ownership of banks, insurance companies, social media giants, and even pension funds, Aladdin now possesses huge amounts of personal data on everyone. Everyone who has ever knowingly or unknowingly given BlackRock money. And with such a powerful tool under their arsenal, everyone now wants a piece of the pie. And by controlling this much data, BlackRock now controls governments. Because BlackRock can use this data to sway companies and even government decisions. For example, BlackRock successfully lobbied to get a contract to manage the EU's regulation of banks. However, this backroom deal is now being investigated as BlackRock themselves own the banks they should be regulating. And this is just one of the many examples of these sorts of actions. A 2016 study in the Journal of Finance documented that investment companies like BlackRock show, quote, widespread behind-the-scenes intervention in the companies that they own stakes in. And this problem only gets worse as BlackRock owns stakes in nearly all major publicly traded companies. And now with our current recession, BlackRock is buying as much homes and real estate as possible, causing regular house prices to skyrocket. BlackRock profits when a society doesn't own their homes but rents, because BlackRock can squeeze even more money out of the economy through mortgaging off these artificially inflated homes. But this whole situation becomes even more sinister when you realize BlackRock's power is now being compromised by other actors. For example, in August 2020, BlackRock became the first foreign company to be allowed access into China's mutual fund industry. This means that BlackRock can now invest and own parts of Chinese companies. God only knows what BlackRock promised Xi Jinping if they're allowed in. But by being allowed in, BlackRock now works with companies that are blacklisted by the US. One example is BlackRock's investment in a CCP-owned company called Hikvision. Hikvision makes security and communications technology for both civilian and military use by the Chinese government. And they're also known for their wide-scale human rights abuses.
How do you think your facial recognition technology will change China?
Everything happened in the public can be record.
Now, this money being invested into China isn't just BlackRock's own money. Most of this money comes from the pension funds and bank accounts that ordinary people pay into BlackRock inadvertently. Through BlackRock controlling banks, people have no choice about whether they give BlackRock and the CCP this money. That's if they even know about BlackRock. This recent trend of BlackRock funding authoritarian regimes can only mean bad things for Western democracy, because this empowers regimes like China and Russia. It gives credence to dystopian regimes, and this trend is now promoting others to do the same. I mean, BlackRock recently recommended that their investors triple their investments in China. This would place billions more into a dystopian regime at the expense of the West. And the worst part is that China sees the companies that operate within it as simply extensions of the one-party state. They own these companies, and in return, the companies act out the CCP's will, which is a worrying fact when you consider that BlackRock owns the entire world's data. TikTok's data harvesting is nothing compared to BlackRock's. BlackRock
my battery's getting low, so I'm just going to have to sign off. Have a good day. Just going to do this so these people move away. Plus, it's great documentation.